We anticipate in the next 10 to 12 years, approximately 8 to 6 million Hispanics coming into the United States and 41 million Asians. You have been the majority minority for 400 years in this country. You have been the number 2 population for 400 years. You're going to get kicked out of being number 2. You're going to go down and become number 4. Now, common sense, even a third grade education would tell you, if you didn't get anything when you were number 2, you all jumped ahead of me, but anyways, you can guess what you're going to get when you become number 4.
President Biden, do you support reparations?
Well, I mean, since I haven't spoken on this, got a chance. Number one, the reason where the country is is because of immigration. We've been able to cherry pick the best from every single time. The people who come here have determination, resilience. They are ready to stand up and work like the devil. We have 24 of 100 children in our school today is Hispanic. The idea that we are going to walk away and not provide every opportunity for them is that not only stupid and immoral, but it's bad for America. They are the future of America. Systemic racism that has plagued our nation for far, far too long. I said that over the course of the past year that the blinders have been taken off the nation, the American people. But what many Americans didn't see or had simply refused to see couldn't be ignored any longer. Those 8 minutes and 46 seconds that took George Floyd's life opened the eyes of millions of Americans and millions of people around all over the world. It was the knee on the neck of justice, and it wouldn't be forgotten. And it's not white Americans' fault, but just the fact.
The very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white presence from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farm. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with. And this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington, in this campaign, we're coming to get our check.
We are owed $104 trillion on the very low end, plus $735 billion recurring. This number does not include the cost of about 50 Black Wall Streets that were decimated, nor compound interest from 2017 when Sean D. Rochester's book, The Black Tax, was published, nor the cost of Black life, nor the cost of living increases, nor the war on drugs, nor the current day pandemic. The number I'm working with is for slavery, Jim Crow, and accrued ongoing systemic racism, oppression, and disadvantage in the country our ancestors built with their lives. If you believe in this number as I do and would like to join me in the fight for reparations, please email me at friendsofadostv@gmail.com. That's friendsofadostv@gmail.com.
Good evening on the West Coast. Good evening in the mountain. Good evening in the Central. Good evening on the East Coast. You know exactly who it is, family. Angela Nirvana, your hostess with the mostest on the reparationist perspective, bringing you those ADOCS hot topics and making the case for reparations, making the case for weaponizing our vote and socializing our suffering. And today, this is your evening wake-up call. Normally, it is the midday wake-up call, family, but I was at a trial myself. That's what I do for a living. I work in the courts, and I had a trial that went on the record and then was moved to the afternoon. The case carried over, so I had no time to bring you your midday report like I love to do. And so I'm here now with you and very happy to be here. It's very, very different because Racebook is at it again. They shut me down right before my 6 p.m. show. And so I'm going to use this as an opportunity to let Racebook go. I will no longer be doing my live feeds on Racebook. I will be here at YouTube, and a Patreon is coming soon. And I'm still on Periscope, although that's more than likely going away as well. So please like, share, subscribe, and turn on your notifications because I'm done with Racebook. That's where my biggest audience was built. That's where I was born in terms of the show, where I had the biggest and largest audience, but they keep bothering me. I can't speak freely. I can't post. This time they shut me down without an explanation and without even telling me when I can go back live over there. So lots of my comrades have been imploring upon me to let it go, let Racebook go. And you know how it is with God, as I shared in my prior segment. Hey, when you can't leave a thing, God will remove it from you. And so that's what I like in this experience too. I couldn't let Racebook go because I was codependent on the audience I had built over there. So now I'm looking to do that here. I'm at about 500 and maybe 20 subscribers. But now I pray that you help me to grow, akin to how I've helped other channels to grow. And that you'll share, because what I have to impart to you, you're never going to hear on the lamestream media. They will never give you the news you should choose to use as ADOCS. They're not going to give you the data pertaining to ADOCS. They're not going to unpack these articles and the different things the government is doing to us to make us fourth-class citizens and make us eat the cost of slavery in the country our ancestors built with their lives. That's what you're going to get over here at the Reparations Perspective. So preferably you will come to see that it is as invaluable as what I was doing in a predominantly audience of Facebook. And we can grow this and keep on sharing. And once we reach critical mass, then we can get these reparations in the trillions that were long overdue. So without further ado, family, I want to jump right in because I only have about an hour with you. And that's fading fast. I don't like to give you ear fatigue. But I was in Clubhouse yesterday, and I learned from a gentleman named King about this White House task force on New Americans, which is really a plan to totally extinct ADOCS. Like I said earlier, this government is trying to set us up to eat the cost of slavery. So let's get into it. The White House task force on New Americans. Now, this happened under Obama. Under Obama. So I'm reading from Obama White House archives.issues/immigration New Americans. Welcoming immigrants and refugees from around the world without paying ADOCS the reparations we are owed in the trillions over multi-generations. This plan was implemented under the Obama administration as he created 1 million white millionaires on his watch, while over 50% of ADOCS lost the only wealth they had, their homes. He is now worth $70 million in 2020 alone, and was a no to our reparations. The basic idea of welcoming immigrants to our shores is central to our way of life. It is in our DNA. We believe our diversity, our differences, when joined together by a common set of ideals, makes us stronger, makes us more creative, makes us different. From all these different strands, we make something new here in America. President Barack Obama, July 4, 2014, me speaking. So before I really dig into this, I want to jump to another article where Biden is paying more than the $60 million per week for the migrant children. Okay? New York is paying the illegals anywhere from $3,000 to $15,000 for the pandemic. How much did you receive during the pandemic? How much was your stimulus? Was it 15,000? Was it 3,000? I remember 6, 12, 24. 24, 12 is 24, 12 is 35. Okay, 4,100. Now, if you have children, you received, okay, with my daughter, that makes 8,200. I received. But you're giving illegals anywhere from $3,000 to $15,000 in New York. So I want to jump to this article so I can frame the discussion around why this is designed to extinct us. This new America thing, without making ADOCS whole economically, without giving us inclusion, without giving us social and economic justice, it's going to be to our peril. So let me jump to the $60 million per week, and I'm going to tell you how that too is a lie. Let's do the math together. Biden administration spending $60 million per week to shelter unaccompanied minors. The government projects that by September, about 22,000 to 26,000 unaccompanied minors will arrive at the border each month and require what? Federal care. Now, they're doing this while telling us they don't have enough money to pay our reparations, while they're telling us they want to study our repair. Let's read. The Biden administration appears to be spending at least $60 million per week to care for more than 16,000 migrant teenagers and children in shelters operated by the Department of Health and Human Services. And those costs are expected to rise significantly over the coming months, according to an analysis of government data obtained by the Washington Post. Me speaking. Know that my reading will be disrupted by thoughts off the dome from the Most High to impart to you. Now, I learned in Clubhouse yesterday from King that there's something like 100,000 jobs that they are earmarking for these very immigrants. That's why they're putting so much money into these immigrants. They're pouring so much money into them because it is their intent to employ them. Okay? And as we read some of the information I pulled up here, we will get into where this is going. Okay, not bring jobs into our communities. Biden's spending $300 million more to bring in more race soldiers, whom I've already shared with you guys, that the FBI in 2016 did a report from since 2006, that the KKK, neo-Nazis, and skinheads had infiltrated the police force all throughout the country. Why is that? Because the people that are hiring them says it's a violation of their First Amendment right not to hire them on the basis that they are aligned with hate groups. And then they put them in our communities and they execute us with impunity. So they're not bringing jobs to ADOCS communities. They're not bringing home ownership. They're not bringing an American wage, not even a living wage, an American wage. They got the preschool to prison pipeline set up for us as they sit up here and make plans. More than 60 million a week. And I'm going to tell you how I got there for these migrant children at the border. All the while, ICE has deported 2 planes full of Haitian children back to Port-au-Prince. So this new America is not designed to increase the Black numbers at all. With a record number of unaccompanied minors arriving at the border in the past several weeks, HHS quickly filled the 7,700 available beds in its network of permanent shelters, where the cost of caring for a child is about $290 daily, and capacity has been reduced by COVID-19 protocols. Okay, let's do the math. Let's do the math. $290 a day per child. They have filled 7,700 beds. So let's just get the cost of per child down first. Take out your trusted calculators. $290 per child per day. So let's do it in the course of a month. Let's do the week. Because didn't they say it was 60 million per week? Let's talk about what they're really spending per week. So $290 per day times 7 days equals $2,030 times 7,700 is 15,631,000. 15,631,000 per week. Let's multiply that per month times 4. So monthly they're spending 62,524,000 on the illegal immigrants at the border, while telling us no to reparations. While 87% of our electorate went out to vote for this. And oh, by the way, 1,000 of them are coming over here to the Long Beach Convention Center near where I stay. They'll be housing them over there. The city council just passed that to receive federal funding, more of our tax dollars, no matter how you slice it, to operate a place to house them right here in my neck of the woods without consulting with us. Then back to the text. The administration has raced to set up at least 10 large emergency facilities, creating 16,000 temporary beds for migrant children in convention centers, at converted oil worker camps, and on military bases. About 8,500 children are living at these pop-up sites, and 4,000 more are waiting to be transferred from cramped border facilities. So let's back it up. They're creating 16,000. Okay, let's do some more math. Now, let's not even do any math right now. That math was on the low end, okay? That math was on the low end. So let's keep reading, because I'm seeing approximately $775 per day based upon past experience. So I want to get that math wrapped around what the true cost is. Let's keep going. About 8,500 children are living at these pop-up sites, and 4,000 more are waiting to be transferred from cramped border facilities. And I'm going to show you Ted Cruz at the border too, showing the kids in these cramped facilities in a pandemic. The cost of these emergency sites is more than 2.5 times higher than the more permanent shelters. Did you hear that? Due to the need to develop facilities quickly and hire significant staff over a short period of time, said Kenneth Wolf, a spokesperson for HHS's Administration for Children and Families. He said the average daily cost per child is approximately $775 per day based on past experience. What ADOCS do you know making $260 a day? What ADOCS do you know making $775 a day? While they continue to tell you we need to study your repair, and we're looking at it on a cashless reparations basis. So let's do the math. 16,000 times 775. Let's do 775 times 7 first. We're going to get a weekly breakdown and then a monthly. So 775 times 7. That's $5,425 for migrant children that they're spending per week. 775 times 7. Now, let's take 5425 times 16,000 beds. $86,800,000 per week. 86,800,000 per week. While telling us no to reparations. Per month is $347,200,000. And this is why Facebook shuts me down. Because I am sharing memes with these numbers plastered all over them to make the case for weaponizing our vote. Had Trump been at the top of the ticket and we had a blue Congress to protect the over 53% of ADOCS since COVID who rely on government assistance by design of institutional systemic racism, would this be going on? And don't speak to me about a trifecta. The trifecta is what's anchoring us to the bottom. As the bottom caste in the country our ancestors built with their lives. The trifecta is our peril. And don't tell me, oh, well, only the Democrats will pass reparations. Neither one of them is committed to passing reparations. Have you heard Biden give an executive order to study our repair? Has Biden given an executive order for our preservation as a people? Or has he weaponized what the execution of George Floyd to give protections to Asians and to give AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islanders, $80.2 billion. Is that right? 80.2 billion, or is it million? I think it's 80.2 million, if my memory of my archive serves me. And the Indians just got another 30.1 billion for more reparations for them. So that's why I've been sharing about the weaponization of the vote. We've got to shut it down, gridlock government, until we can replace the lanes with full-chested cash reparationists in Congress. We're never going to get it like this. They are hemorrhaging money, setting up the new America to come in here and just totally wipe us out. I was speaking with a comrade who shared, do I believe it is their intent to extinct us before giving us any type of reparations? They don't want to give it to a number this large. It sure feels that way. Back to the text. Please like, share, subscribe, donate to the channel. I appreciate all of your support in educating the masses and advocating for ADOCS. Yep, this is exactly why Facebook shut me down. They don't want me sharing this over there. Teens and children are spending an average of 31 days. Well, I'm sorry, back it up. Reporters have repeatedly asked the Biden administration for cost data associated with the emergency shelters, aside from the $775 figure. Officials have not provided a breakdown by location or indicated whether there are financial savings associated with the use of military bases, for instance, in comparison with other sites. Teens and children are spending an average of 31 days in HHS custody before they are released to a vetted family member already in the U.S. or to an eligible sponsor, according to the most recent HHS data. So the government is spending about $24,000 for each minor held at the temporary facilities. That doesn't include time spent in a Border Patrol facility. The number is worse than what I just shared. What's 24,000 times 16,000 per week. Okay, 24,000 times 7 is 168,000 per week times 16,000 is 2,688,000,000. But they don't have money for our reparations. The government projects that by September, about 22,000 to 26,000 unaccompanied minors will arrive each month and require HHS care, further stretching spending levels. Okay, so let's look at it. Okay, so 168,000. Let's multiply that by the high end, 26,000. That's 4,368,000,000 per week. Or was that per month? That's per week. Let's look at that. Let's multiply that by 4. So 4,368,000,000 per week multiplied by 4 is 17,472,000,000 per month. Is that right? Yep. 17,472,000,000 per month for 26,000 unaccompanied minors arriving each month. During a historic influx of migrant family groups in 2019, the Trump administration got Congress to approve a $4.6 billion supplemental funding bill, money that was used in part to expand shelter capacity and improve care for migrants in government custody. Last month, the Administration for Children and Families received $447.5 billion in funding through the $1.9 trillion coronavirus relief bill approved by Congress. Just giving our stimulus away, giving our reparations away. The HHS secretary has authority to reprogram discretionary spending for the unaccompanied minors program, affording the agency a significant cushion for shelter costs that could run into the billions of dollars this year. With assistance from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, HHS has opened or announced plans to open at least 10 emergency sites in California and Texas in recent weeks. I just shared with you about the one coming to the Long Beach Convention Center, in Dallas, San Antonio, and San Diego. Others are sleeping in church shelters in Houston, tent facilities in South Texas, and modular housing near oil drilling sites outside San Antonio and Midland. This is what 87% of our electorate voted for. The largest temporary shelter announced to date is at Fort Bliss, an Army post in El Paso, which will have as many as 5,000 beds. The facilities are overseen by HHS, but generally operated through contracts with nonprofit groups and faith-based organizations. Among the most significant costs are staffing and insurance, officials say. The Biden administration has struggled to staff the sites quickly and has circulated several appeals within the Department of Homeland Security for volunteers to help care for minors alongside the Red Cross, HHS, medical personnel, and others. In the middle of a pandemic with other variants. This is a nightmare. I'm at 7:30. Let me jump from this to, I want to talk about the new Americas. Let's go back and read a little bit more about this new Americas. They're in New York. They're everywhere, honey. This is crazy. And that's what these immigrants and refugees are for. So Barack continues, our proud tradition of continually welcoming immigrants and refugees from around the world is part of what makes America exceptional. We're bound together by the power of a simple idea that everyone willing to work hard and play by the rules is welcome. As they extinct us through the arm of institutional systemic racism, having given away our affirmative action to white women, immigrants, and LGBTQIA. But then want to tell us to pull ourselves up by our bootless straps. Everybody owns ADOCS but ADOCS. On November 21st, 2014, the president established the White House Task Force on New Americans, a government-wide effort tasked with better integrating immigrants and refugees into American communities. Want to get more details about the task force recommendations? Read the strategic action plan here. In 2015, the task force has been busy implementing recommended actions and highlighting local models of success. Here's what it has accomplished so far. Spearheaded the building Welcoming Communities campaign, BWCC, to encourage local efforts with 47 communities signed on to date. Launched the Stand Stronger Citizenship Awareness campaign to reach the 8.8 million lawful permanent residents, LPRs, eligible to apply for citizenship, giving them a pathway to citizenship before making ADOCS American. Named presidential ambassadors for citizenship and naturalization to harness the stories of prominent new Americans and U.S.-born individuals with immigrant roots to promote naturalization, bolster integration initiatives, and increase awareness of the rich contributions of new Americans. Committed 150 welcoming communities, AmeriCorps members to nearly 100 communities. Launched the Made It in America initiative to promote entrepreneurship and held more than 80 SBA 101 classes for immigrant and refugee entrepreneurs. Have they done any of this for ADOCS? More immigrant and refugee race soldiers to our peril in our communities to extinct us. Support 5 communities seeking to strengthen integration and local networks through adult education providers. The 1-year progress report is 41 pages long. 41 pages long. This is genocidal for ADOCS, who can't even compete with the immigrants who are currently here. Let me find an article. I'm looking for an article that's against this. It's bad for ADOCS. It's bad for Blacks. They don't even talk about it. The ethnic cleansing of Black. Indianapolis. Let's see what Indianapolis has to say about it. This is ethnic cleansing. I found one article. During its heyday, Indiana Avenue was a center of Black culture in Indianapolis. During the jazz era, legends like Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, Ella Fitzgerald played alongside locals like the Hampton Sisters and Wes Montgomery at the 30-plus clubs in the neighborhood. The Avenue Hold on one second. The Avenue was also home to the headquarters of Madam C.J. Walker's Majestic Theater and Hair Care Manufacturing Company, prominent Black churches, Black newspapers, and Black-owned businesses. It was also the site of one of the first federal housing projects in America, Lockville Gardens, which boasted indoor plumbing for all 748 units, shops, a school, and plenty of wide open green spaces for residents. When it opened in 1938, even white families wanted to move there. Today, little of the original architecture and few of the original family homes remain. So what happened? Indiana Avenue began to decline as the mecca of Black culture in Indianapolis in the late 50s when racial equity improved and Blacks started moving to white neighborhoods. Variations of that last line are found in most narratives, historical markers, and retellings by Indianapolis institutions. And if true, would be refreshing that despite its poor record on civil rights, Indiana was ahead of the curve at one time. Unfortunately, the truth about why Blacks left Indiana Avenue has nothing to do with integration and greater racial equity, and everything to do with racism and the planned ethnic cleansing of over 400 acres of Black neighborhoods. This is happening all over the country, family. And with this new America plan that I just found out about, it's going to really escalate this. Ethnic cleansing of ADOCS in America. The philosopher, that's going to be a new series. The philosopher George Santayana said, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. But when we repeat harmful revisionist retellings of the past, not only do we repeat the same mistakes, we enable future mistakes. Today, Indianapolis is a diverse, multi-ethnic city with a 30% Black population and a total non-white population of 45%. The city continues to face extreme economic and health disparities between races. If these issues of equity are to ever be addressed, we need a deeper understanding of what happened in the not-so-distant past in order to move forward. To understand and combat inequity in Indianapolis, we must learn more about what Indiana Avenue actually was, how it existed, and who really brought about its demise. The rise of Indiana Avenue. Indiana Avenue was as much a Black Wall Street as it was in Indianapolis, Harlem. It was both an internationally known center of Black music during the Jazz Age and a regional center of Black commerce and entrepreneurship. Technically, Indiana Avenue is just one of 4 diagonal streets radiating from the center of town, but it was way more than just an avenue. Symbolically and culturally, it was an organism. The avenue was a mile of business that catered to Black residents, Black-owned businesses, churches, bars, nightclubs, theaters, and homes. Indiana Avenue itself was surrounded by some 400 to 500 acres of Black neighborhoods. By the early 1900s, some of these neighborhoods went as far south as Washington Street and as far north as 16th Street. Indiana Avenue was more than a simple neighborhood. It was a spine of a whole collection of Black neighborhoods with a few pockets of immigrant enclaves in the mix. Each neighborhood had its own homes, shops, churches, and infrastructure. While yes, white European immigrants also settled amidst Black residents, the city was merely a few decades old before Black leadership stepped up to develop a largely undeveloped area. In basic terms, the avenue and many surrounding Black neighborhoods weren't the product of a previous generation of European settlement left after a white flight. It was intentionally built by and for the Black community. Indiana's 20th century story is not one of the civil rights and racial equity. One of the last lynchings in America happened in Marion, Indiana, and the Indiana KKK boasted 250,000 members at the height of its mainstream popularity in the 1920s. Lynching has not stopped. It's just changed. The KKK neo-Nazis and the skinheads now carry a badge and have a license and a badge to execute us with impunity, under qualified immunity. That 1920s membership roll included the governor, mayor of Indianapolis, over half the elected member of the Indiana General Assembly, and many other high-ranking local and state officials. Did you hear that? The governor, the mayor, the membership roll of the KKK, 250,000 members, included the governor, mayor of Indianapolis, over half the elected member of the Indiana General Assembly, and many other high-ranking local and state officials. So it should be no surprise that in Indiana Avenue's earliest days, blacks and immigrants were largely left alone on the avenue because the central canal bisecting the area was known to carry malaria. Still, the area thrived. The first known black-owned business opened on the avenue in 1865. By 1870, 974 blacks, about one-third of the city's black population, called it home. By 1873, black police officers and firefighters were being hired by the city to keep the avenue and surrounding canal neighborhoods safe. In 1910, the avenue's most famous resident arrived. That year, Madam C.J. Walker relocated her business to the avenue and utilized local talent and labor and leadership to quickly build a worldwide business empire. At the time of her death in 1919, she was considered the wealthiest self-made woman of any race in America, with a manufacturing operation that lasted 70 years. Walker raised funds to build Black branch of the YMCA on Senate Avenue and began development of the Walker Building. Sometimes called the Walker Theater, it is a four-story multi-use building that housed the world headquarters of Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company, a beauty school and salon, a ballroom, an auditorium, movie theater, a drugstore, a coffee shop, and professional offices. The theater, still standing today, incorporated African, Egyptian, and Moorish designs and is one of the few remaining African Art Deco buildings in the U.S. So I want to skip ahead because I'm at 7:42. Okay. The Black community contributed mightily to the economy of Indianapolis, even if they weren't all wealthy enough to leave behind a building as their legacy. There were many white-owned manufacturing enterprises in and around the Indiana Avenue neighborhoods that made use of cheap Black labor. Acme Evans' 9-story state-of-the-art mill, the largest in Indiana at the time, had a 90% Black workforce. Where do you know of a 90% Black workforce in this country today? Our government has given immigrants those jobs under affirmative action. Then there was Kingen and Company, one of the largest meatpacking companies in the world, with an industrial complex straddling the White River that employed 500 Black workers by 45. According to the 1940 census, my great-grandfather made the modern equivalent of less than $15,000 a year with a family to support, which appears to be the norm at the time. While the collection of Indiana Avenue neighborhoods thrived in its own way, the area would never generate as much tax revenue or look as shiny and new as white communities. Discriminatory practices in redlining were common, meant that denying Black access to loans and other financial services was held up, even endorsed by regulations and laws. So what is new about the regulations and laws to this day? Barack Obama lent less than 2% to Black business owners of the SBA when he was in office. Even George Bush Jr. lent 6%. The Fair Housing Act wouldn't be signed until 1968, and even then had uneven impact. And so even in its heyday, the avenue had a well-worn look since home and business owners didn't have easy access to capital for improvements or expansion. What is new today? The median Asian income in this nation is $87,000 to white folks, $65,000 to ADOCS, $41,000, with a median national home price of $340,000. We have been neutralized economically, and now they're coming for the vote. The immigrants already outnumber us. We are 46 million, including 5 million Black immigrants, 41 million ADOCS. And the immigrants in this country number 70 million. And they're ramping up to bring in all these migrant children to create a new labor force with these kids over giving us reparations and a Black agenda for social and economic justice and inclusion. Maybe I'm trying to find my place, guys. The Fair Housing Act wouldn't be signed until 68. Okay. Eventually, the Indianapolis Police Department began to raid establishments that attracted too many whites on the avenue. You hear that? The Indianapolis Police Department, which has been infiltrated and formed with the KKK, 250,000 members strong in this community, began to raid establishments that attracted too many whites on the avenue. The chief of police even publicly stated in 1939 that it was his intention to enforce segregation on the avenue. The crackdown stemmed the flow of visitor dollars, meaning that money grew tighter for even the most successful avenue owners. It was during this era of enforced segregation that the avenue's jazz scene began to slow down a bit. Many clubs closed. Many illegal gambling spots did not. In the absence of official financial access, the role was often fulfilled by bootleggers, drug dealers, bookies, boosters, fencing operations, and pimps. This did wonders for the status of criminals, elevating their profiles as bankers and philanthropists in the Black community. These underworld figures financially supported intramural sports teams and youth programs, loaned money for emergency home repairs, and provided auto loan business loans. This naturally caused more frustration on the part of city government, as it gave the impression that the Black community on the avenue supported the criminal element. In reality, these relationships and trade-offs were forced by white supremacy from the start. The so-called decline of Indiana Avenue. Let me see what you guys, if there's anybody in the chat. All right, be well. Okay. Hi, Antoine Foster. Thank you for joining the live. Okay, nothing to report in terms of comments. So I'm going to read one more paragraph, and then I'm going to stop it right there until tomorrow, okay, where I'm going to finish this segment. It's just a lot to cover in 1 hour. Thank you all, one and all, for joining the live. So let me go back to it. Oh. Well, where's the article go? Hold on, family. Okay, here we go. So, the so-called decline of Indiana Avenue. Most narratives of Indiana Avenue history point to a decline starting in the 1950s with integration or increased racial equity. These false narratives make it seem that Blacks willingly abandon their own neighborhoods and cultural district to live in some post-racial integrated Indianapolis. They've been pushing this kind of post-racial lie since the 50s. Sooner than that. Despite all the talk of improving racial equity and integration, the facts are this. The U.S. Justice Department filed suit in federal court against the Indianapolis Public Schools for segregation in '68. The Justice Department fought the school system for years, eventually finding IPS guilty of racial segregation for drawing its school boundaries to take advantage of segregated housing. Judge S. Hugh Dillon forced school integration with a court order for busing that lasted 35 years in Indianapolis. Ironically, IPS segregation was worse at the end of those 35 years than at the start. In fact, Indianapolis remained among the top 10 segregated cities in America per housing data until around 2010, when it dropped to number 11. At 11, Indianapolis still beat out Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Boston, and even Memphis, Tennessee. None of these facts support the narrative that groups of Black residents of any class moved in large numbers to integrated, welcoming white neighborhoods, because few neighborhoods remained integrated for long. In reality, Indianapolis was segregated into smaller sections, Statistics show that blacks did move into new areas in the 50s, but many of those neighborhoods were already experiencing white flight and were in the path of I-65 and I-70. During this era, we see many original Indiana Avenue residents having moved to new neighborhoods in the late 50s, experiencing white flight, entire block wiped out by interstate construction within 5 years. Meanwhile, back on Indiana, continued redlining made it difficult for the next generation of blacks to get home loans to buy homes in the neighborhood at all. Even with all of this shuffling and relocation, the real driver behind black population decline on the avenue had yet to take hold. Total annihilation by IUPUI, City of Indianapolis, and white supremacy. I got about 10 minutes to the segment. I'm going to keep going. The Avenue wasn't the only place blacks lived in Indianapolis, but it was a center of black culture and had always been punctuated with severe housing shortages. These shortages left even some middle-class blacks paying exorbitant rents for substandard living conditions by the early 1900s. What's different in 2021? With a nationwide median income of $41,000 and a median home price of $340,000, ADOCS are forced to rent and pay heavily to do so. In 1935, 383 homes that were considered slum housing by the city were leveled, and federal funds were used to create Lockfield Gardens. Lockfield was a well-designed 748-unit housing complex featuring spacious rooms, open green spaces, playgrounds, a school, and storefronts exclusively for blacks. But while the new units helped relieve some housing pressure, they didn't solve the housing stock problem. In migration and the baby boom grew the population of Indianapolis overall and the black community even more rapidly. From 1950 to 1960, the black Indianapolis population grew by over 34,000, while the white population grew far more slowly. Me speaking, this is why they started making everyone white. To this day, they make other groups white to add to their shrinking numbers. I don't know if I mentioned it here or on my other show, but they are literally, oh no, I think it's on this show. Oh, they blend one into the other. But they're literally bringing in a bazillion migrant children from the Hispanic communities whilst deploying 2 charter planes full of Haitian children. They're not giving the Haitian children a place to sleep and eat for 30 days at some astronomical cost, $775 a day. They're not doing that for Haitian children until they can find relatives or sponsors in this country for Haitian children. They've deported them. They're doing this for groups that they've made white, like Hispanics. This is not good at all for ADOCS, family. Oh my God. Ethnic cleansing of ADOCS is happening right before our eyes. From 1950 to 1960, the white population grew far more slowly, can't have babies. Black families who couldn't access Lockfield were in a tough spot. So as it turns out, we're long-term residents who were making do expending the housing stock the only ways limited resources and racist practices would allow. It was during this period of population boom that Indiana University's boundaries began eating away at the surrounding black community to expand its university medical center. The university's Indianapolis presence just west of downtown had been growing since it opened its medical school in the early 1900s. In fact, black property was being taken over by the university as early as the 1920s. This is what they were doing out here in New York. Seneca Village, eminent domain, took it away to build Central Park. Bruce's Beach, eminent domain, took it from the blacks to give it under eminent domain to the white folks for Manhattan Beach. Although property acquisition slowed and stopped during the Depression and World War II, the pace would quicken when, in '56, Indiana University's medical center prompted the Indianapolis Redevelopment Commission to declare almost 38 acres of neighborhoods as blighted and substandard. The university then moved to purchase the land and relocate residents by eminent domain if necessary. Indiana Avenue was under attack and quality housing stock dwindled. The cost was very high. This is the last para I'll read and take a break until tomorrow. Nothing underscores the urgency of the housing shortage more than the death of two toddlers in a 1956 electrical fire in a substandard apartment tacked onto the back of a duplex. The children lived with their mother at 614-6 Douglas Street in the shabbily constructed three-room addition, which was literally partitioned with cardboard. The site later became home to Indiana University, Purdue University dorms. The victim's mother put the children to bed and left to make a phone call to hire an electrician to fix the electrical problem she'd been complaining to the landlord about for a week. My then elderly great-grandparents and young newlywed grandparents lived at the front of the duplex. They realized the back of the house was on fire as just my grandmother was cooking dinner. My great-grandfather and grandfather smashed in the door to the shared bathroom, but were beaten back by the flames and unable to save the two toddlers. When the mother returned home from making her call, both of her children were already dead. The Indianapolis Recorder, the city's leading black newspaper, reported that the tragedy brought the death toll to 13 Negro children killed in the last 18 months by house fires, and that the fire chief put the blame squarely on the landlord. Unsafe conditions were often the result of the housing crunch, exacerbated by a growing black population and redlining, which inhibited both repairs and home loans. As demand for black housing reached a fever pitch, Indiana University was overtaking entire neighborhoods. Homeowners and landlords subsequently began to rush to meet housing needs without the capacity to do so safely. As dire as the safe housing landscape was, things were about to get much worse. We'll stop it right there, and we'll pick this up tomorrow. We don't have much further in that article to go. I want to check to see if Indiana is doing anything about reparations. Yeah, nothing. So family, that's my time. Hi, Denise Jarrett, expert stylist. Thank you guys. Please like, share, subscribe, turn on your notifications. My audience is so small because my largest audience comes from Facebook, and they've shut me down without an explanation. They've shut me down in Messenger. I couldn't even get the word out to many of my audience. They didn't give me a reason. It's under review. I can't tell you when I'll be back onto the Facebook. In the meantime, please like, share, subscribe over here, because I'll be transitioning from Facebook to be here on YouTube, and then I'm going to build a Patreon so that I can talk about what I want as freely as I want, unimpeded by Facebook. I just have to grow in other spaces. This has been a wake-up call for me. That's been knocking at me for a while now to get off of Facebook, because they keep shutting me down. They keep censoring me. They keep impeding on my First Amendment right to tell it like a TI is. So I thank you guys for watching. This concludes tonight's segment of your evening wake-up call under the series As the World of ADOCS Turns. I'll be back tomorrow midday. That's generally when the segment comes. I'm on at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time and 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time with so at 12 noon is As the World of ADOCS Turns. Okay. That's your midday wake-up call, where I'm giving the data and making the case for reparations using current events and historical events to show you there's nothing new under the sun and to ring the alarm that we are being extincted. Ethnic cleansing is going on under the Biden administration. And I'm also using this site as a way to weaponize the vote and to give you marching orders like Fix HR 40. Let me share that now because I don't know at today's hearing which of our edits, if any, made it onto the floor, although we emailed and we tweeted and we made phone calls to include our 6 vital edits. They are literally sitting up here trying to form a commission for cashless reparations while spending $1 bazillion on these Hispanic migrants, not Haitian, not Black migrant children, Hispanic migrant children to take over the country, to make us bottom caste and to eat the cost of slavery. We are at George Floyd 929, literally and figuratively, family. We need all hands on deck. So please volunteer to help in the efforts over. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep doing this mistake. It's fixhr40.org. Let me type that. Fixhr40.org. None of us can afford to sit on the sidelines and not be invested in what's happening under the Biden administration to the ADOCS. This is ethnic cleansing. You hear me? So that's probably going to be a whole new series about that to ring the alarm. I thank you guys so much for watching. With that said, we're at 8 o'clock. I want to pray a prayer of protection over you that the light of God's... Oh, did I finish? Okay, so at 12 noon, I will be back with your midday wake-up call. And at 6 p.m., I come back with the Ida B. Wells 2.0 series presents Anti-Black Racism. I'll be covering the Chauvin trial and other little extras and sharing the way I see it. Keeping a magnifying glass on our anti-Black racism that is continuing under the auspice of our 400-plus year Holocaust in the country our ancestors built with their lives. With that said, family, the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever ADOCS and its allies are, God truly is, because, family, you are the face of God. You are the voice of God. You are the body temple of the Spirit of the living God. And until tomorrow midday, you make it a beautiful God-inspired rest of your evening. I love you, Black. I love you, strong. Peace.